The morgue was colder than usual that night. Elias Ward shivered beneath his lab coat as he scribbled final notes on a death certificate, the sterile hum of fluorescent lights buzzing above him like a swarm of flies. The Grayfield County morgue had always been unsettling, but tonight the air felt wrong. Dense. Like something invisible was watching. He tried to ignore the weight pressing down on him, attributing it to exhaustion. 3 bodies had arrived today. 2 were routine, an overdose and a car crash. The 3rd was anything but. The 3rd had no name, no identity, no record. Found half buried behind the crumbling chapel of St. Gertrude Cemetery, the corpse's face was frozen in a grotesque mask of terror. Mouth stretched unnaturally wide, as though the soul had been torn out mid-scream. Its eyes bulged, blood vessels exploded within, and its skin was icy gray, not from decomposition, but something else. Something far more sinister. Elias pulled back the sheet covering the corpse. The gnarled sigil burned into its chest made his stomach churn. It wasn't a symbol he recognized, circular, but fractured, filled with jagged lines like splintered bone radiating from a void in the center. The tissue around the mark wasn't simply burned. It looked consumed, charred from the inside out, as though something had clawed its way out from within the man's very soul. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. He didn't notice, focused instead on the strange black fluid slowly leaking from the corpse's nose and mouth, thick, tar-like, and pungent. The stench of sulfur mixed with rotting meat filled the air, and for a moment, Elias gagged. Then the lights cut out entirely. The sudden darkness swallowed the room, and the distant hum of the backup generator didn't kick in. Elias froze. His breath came in shallow, foggy puffs. The morgue, windowless and buried beneath concrete, was now as silent as a tomb. He reached for his flashlight on the table, fingers trembling. Just as his hand closed around it, he heard a sound. Whispers. They crept from the shadows like tendrils of ice. Incomprehensible at first, guttural, breathless. Then, slowly, they began to form words. It watches, it waits, it eats. Elias's heart pounded so violently it felt like it might burst. He whipped on the flashlight and spun around. The beam illuminated the far wall. Nothing. He turned back toward the corpse. It was sitting up. Elias staggered backward, crashing into a tray of instruments. Scalpel and forceps clattered to the ground. The flashlight shook in his hand as the beam landed on the corpse's face, still dead, eyes glassy and unfocused. Yet its mouth hung open wider than before, impossibly wide. A single word seemed to echo from that gaping maw, though the lips did not move. Reaper. Elias bolted from the room, stumbling down the dim hallway toward the generator room. His shoes squeaked against the slick, old linoleum, the echo bouncing unnaturally. Everything felt wrong, like the walls were narrowing around him, squeezing him towards something inescapable. He reached the generator door, flung it open, and flipped the emergency switch. The lights hummed back to life with a buzz, but for only a moment. Then they exploded. Bulbs burst along the hallway in a cascade of sparks, plunging everything back into darkness, the noise deafening. Elias ducked, shielding his face, heart thundering in his throat. In the silence that followed, he heard it again. Footsteps. Wet. Heavy. Dragging. Something was walking down the hall, toward him. But it wasn't walking on feet. It slithered, scraped, shuffled like a carcass dragged through broken glass. The air grew colder. The whispers returned, louder this time, overlapping like 100 dying breaths speaking as one. It wants the soul, it always comes, you saw its mark, now it sees you. Elias turned and ran. He didn't care about the protocols, about the security feed, or his job. All he could think about was escape, out of the morgue, into the night, anywhere away from that thing. He burst through the stairwell door and took the steps 2 at a time. But even in his panic, he could hear it coming. Slowly. Surely. Not fast, but unrelenting. As if time didn't matter. It knew he would tire. It never did. Outside, the storm had worsened. Rain poured in sheets, lightning forked the sky, and thunder boomed like the earth itself was screaming. Elias sprinted through the parking lot, soaked instantly, fumbling with his keys as he reached his car. The engine coughed once. Twice. Then started. He drove like a madman, tires skidding on wet asphalt, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror constantly. Nothing followed him. Yet he felt it. Watching. Waiting. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat with the lights on in his apartment, every sound making him flinch, every shadow becoming a doorway to something awful. By morning, he returned to the morgue with the police. The building was locked. No signs of forced entry. But the security footage was gone. Erased. Every second from the past 24 hours. The third body vanished. Nothing remained of the unknown man except for a strange black scorch mark on the autopsy table, shaped eerily like the sigil that had been on his chest. The other two bodies had been untouched. One officer joked about Elias needing a vacation. Another patted him on the back, saying it must have been nerves or stress. But Elias couldn't stop trembling. Because in the darkest corner of his memory, echoing through his mind like a broken record, he kept hearing that word. Reaper. And somehow, deep down, he knew. It wasn't done with him. Not yet. Elias didn't return to work for 2 days. His mind played the events of that night over and over, every shadow, every sound, the burned sigil, and the way the corpse sat up with lifeless eyes. The word still echoed in his ears like a whisper he couldn't shake, Reaper. He hadn't told the police everything. What could he say? That a corpse had whispered to him in the dark and then disappeared. That something had followed him. They'd have had him committed. But something was wrong. Deeply wrong. On the third morning, he noticed the mark. It was faint at first, just a small, dark spot on his chest, slightly below his collarbone. At first, he thought it was a bruise. But by noon, it had spread, forming lines, a pattern. The same sigil from the corpse. Elias scrubbed at it in the mirror, heart hammering. He clawed at his skin until it bled, but the mark remained. Burned into him. His phone buzzed. Unknown caller. He hesitated, then answered. Only static. Then, beneath the white noise, a voice. You saw it. Now it sees you. Elias dropped the phone. The room grew cold, unnaturally so. His breath fogged the mirror. Behind him, something moved. He spun around. Nothing. But for a moment, just a moment, he swore he saw a shape in the reflection. A tall, robed figure in the corner, its face hidden in shadows, watching him with eyes that weren't eyes at all, just hollow voids. The Reaper. He didn't wait. He grabbed his keys and left. St. Gertrude Cemetery was deserted, save for a single groundskeeper in a torn raincoat, tending to a crumbling tombstone. The air reeked of damp earth and decay. Elias approached slowly. Excuse me, he said. I'm looking for the grave where a man was found 2 nights ago, half buried near the chapel. The old man looked up, face hollow, eyes sunken and twitching. You mean the one with the scream still on his face, he rasped. We called him Hollow Jack. He wasn't supposed to be here. What do you mean? He wasn't buried. He was left, the old man said, glancing around nervously. They said he died in another state. No records. No prints. Just appeared one day, screaming into the dirt. Do you know what this is? Elias pulled his shirt down, revealing the faint, burned sigil on his chest. The groundskeeper's eyes widened in horror. Get out, he whispered, backing away. You've been seen. Seen by who? The old man pointed to a mausoleum in the distance. He who walks between life and death. The Soul Eater. The Reaper. Lightning cracked above them. Elias turned to look toward the mausoleum. When he looked back, the old man was gone. Inside the chapel, Elias found ancient murals painted on the walls, flaking depictions of angels and demons, heaven and hell, and something else. A figure cloaked in black, dragging chains made of human bones. One painting showed the creature marking people with its hand, the same sigil burned into their skin. Another showed it consuming a figure's soul as they screamed, pulled from their body like smoke drawn into a black hole. At the back of the chapel was an altar. On it, a leather-bound book rested, pages yellowed with age. Elias opened it, flipping through brittle parchment. Latin. Symbols. Rituals. Then he stopped. A page labeled, Animarum Preda, Soul Pray. The passage translated roughly. When the Reaper marks a soul, death will not come in peace. It comes in torment. It feeds on fear, on agony, and steals the soul before it can ascend. The marked are hunted in silence, seen in mirrors, felt in the cold. Only by confronting the Reaper can the mark be broken. But none have returned. The room darkened. Elias felt it before he saw it. Breath on his neck. Cold. Damp. Decay. He turned. There it was. The Soul Reaper stood before him, tall, gaunt, robed in black so dark it swallowed light. Its face was a jagged skull, cracked and hollow, where darkness oozed like ink. Its fingers were long and bony, tipped with talons made of shadow. It raised its hand slowly, pointing at Elias. The sigil on his chest ignited in pain. He screamed, falling to the ground, clutching his skin as fire coursed through his veins. "You are marked," the creature said, not with a mouth, but inside his skull, vibrating like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. 7 days. Then your soul is mine. With a gust of wind and a burst of darkness, it vanished. Elias lay trembling on the chapel floor, the sigil now glowing faintly through his shirt. He knew this wasn't a dream. This wasn't madness. He had been marked for death. And the clock was ticking. Elias awoke on the chapel floor just before dawn, stiff and cold, his mind throbbing with images of the Reaper. The sigil burned beneath his skin like a parasite feeding on his fear. He didn't dare go home. Somehow, he felt safer here, surrounded by the scent of old death than alone in the place where the shadows moved freely. But even the chapel had started to change. The walls whispered when the wind died. The candles lit themselves, flickering in the darkness, forming patterns across the pews. He was being watched, constantly. He needed answers. He needed someone who understood death better than he did. By noon, Elias was at the office of Dr. Marianne Cross, a mortuary consultant and occult scholar with a reputation for dealing with the strange cases. She had pale skin, streaks of white in her black hair, and eyes that studied him like a puzzle already half-solved. "The Soul Reaper," she said, examining the sigil on his chest with a trembling hand. "You shouldn't be alive." "That makes 2 of us," Elias replied. She walked to a shelf and pulled out a worn black volume titled Mortis Umbra, The Shadow of Death. Flipping through pages filled with obscure Latin and hand-drawn illustrations of rituals, spirits, and torment, she stopped at one page and tapped it. There have been very few documented cases of the Soul Reaper. Most end in disappearance. Not death. They just vanish, mind, body, and soul. Like they were never born. Elias leaned forward. "Is there any way to stop it?" Marianne hesitated. "There are legends. Some say if you confront your reflection before the 7th day, you might sever its tether. But mirrors are dangerous. That's how the Reaper sees you. Every time you look into one, it gets closer." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. "Closer?" She nodded. It lives in the liminal, the world between life and death. Reflections. Shadows. Silence. If it appears in your mirror, it's already halfway through. That night, Elias covered every mirror in his apartment with bed sheets, towels, blankets, anything to block the Reaper's gaze. But the sigil still burned, like it pulsed with some otherworldly heartbeat, stronger at night. He tried to sleep, but when his eyes closed, he dreamed of corridors made of bone, doors that opened to screams, and hands clawing from puddles of black glass. At exactly 3:06 a.m., something shattered. He sat bolt upright. The bathroom mirror. Slowly, he walked down the hallway. The air was colder here. Each step sent a chill crawling up his spine. Shards of mirror crunched beneath his bare feet. Inside the bathroom, the mirror had split top to bottom. In the center, where his reflection should have been, there was something else, a dark silhouette behind the broken glass. It looked like him, but wrong. Skin too pale. Eyes completely black. A grin that stretched too wide, revealing jagged teeth that pulsed like maggots. The doppelganger tilted its head. "You can't run from your soul," it whispered. "He already owns it." Elias screamed and smashed the remaining glass with a piece of metal pipe. The apparition vanished, but the air remained thick with dread, as if the Reaper had left a piece of itself behind. By morning, things began to unravel. Every reflective surface betrayed him. He passed a storefront window and saw the Reaper standing behind him in his reflection, closer than before. On his phone screen, his own eyes bled black in a photo he didn't take. Even a puddle in the street shimmered with something moving beneath its surface. At a diner, he glimpsed the waitress's reflection in the coffee pot. It wasn't her. The reflection smiled too wide, blinked too slow. The Reaper was everywhere now. Elias staggered outside, breathing heavily, as if the air was turning to ash. He called Marianne. "It's getting worse," he gasped. "I can't even look at a spoon without seeing it." There was a pause. "You're halfway there," she said softly. "Day 3. It's pulling you in. There's got to be a way to sever it." Marianne's voice dropped to a whisper. "There is, but it's dangerous. You have to face it directly. In the mirror. At the place where the first mark was made. The cemetery. Yes. But if it grabs you, it won't just take your soul. It will drag you into its world. A place between life and death. And there's no coming back." Elias looked at his reflection in the diner window. For a moment, it didn't move with him. It just smiled. "I don't have a choice," he said. That night, Elias returned to the chapel with a full-length mirror strapped to the passenger seat of his car. He set it up against the altar, breathing heavily, sweat dripping from his brow. The room was silent, save for the faint creak of the ancient floorboards. He stared into the mirror. Nothing happened. Then, his reflection blinked first. And smiled. Its mouth stretched wider, wider. Until it tore open with a sound like ripping flesh. From the gaping hole, black smoke poured out, coiling into a shape, tall, skeletal, cloaked in shadow. The Reaper emerged slowly, dragging a scythe formed from bone and flame. "You look into me," it said, "and I look into you." The mirror shattered as the creature lunged forward, arms outstretched. Elias screamed. And then, silence. Just the sound of the wind through the broken chapel windows. The mirror was gone. And so was Elias. Darkness. Cold, vast, and crushing, like being buried alive beneath frozen oceans. Elias opened his eyes and saw nothing. Not blackness, not shadow. Just absence. There was no air, but he didn't need to breathe. No heartbeat. No warmth. His body felt suspended in a void without mass or form. It was as if reality itself had been scraped clean. And then, he heard it. A low, grinding whisper. You crossed the veil. The voice was beneath thought, crawling inside his skull like roaches skittering through bone. It didn't speak in words, it devoured them, and Elias felt them like knives under his skin. He tried to move, but his body felt wrong, too heavy, too stretched. His limbs dragged as if pulled by invisible chains. Suddenly, light burst across the void, not warmth, not comfort, but a sickly green glow like moonlight on rotting flesh. Elias floated down, crashing onto hard, cracked stone. The ground beneath him pulsed like a living wound. He stood slowly, now aware of where he was. The world around him was twisted, an endless expanse of decaying architecture, towering obsidian spires, and rivers of tar coursing with lost souls, their faces stretching through the surface, screaming in silence. This was the Reaper's domain. A realm beyond death. A purgatory of the damned. Ahead stood a colossal gate, twisted bones shaped into an archway, dripping blood that sizzled as it touched the ground. Carved above it, in some primal language that burned his eyes to read, was the word. Memento. Remember. He stepped through. The Reaper's realm was alive. The sky groaned. The spires breathed. Walls twisted with embedded faces, some familiar. His mother. His childhood friend. His own face. The deeper he walked, the more the world bent. Gravity shifted. Stairs climbed themselves. He passed corpses who whispered truths in tongues he'd never heard but still understood. We are you. You are him. He is becoming. You wore the mark. You were chosen before breath. Run if you wish. But your feet are made of soul. Elias pressed forward, toward the sound of scraping metal, a horrible dragging noise that rattled through the marrow of this decayed world. And then he saw it. The Reaper. Taller than before, cloaked in a living shroud made of screams. Its head was a black skull with antlers of rusted iron. Its scythe left trails of fire across the stone as it walked. And beside it, a mirror. Full length. Framed in bone. In it, Elias saw himself, not as he was, but what he was becoming. Skin peeling, eyes hollow, black veins crawling up his neck, jaw unhinged. A creature of the Reaper's making. You are already mine, the Reaper growled. Your soul is just the last piece. Elias stepped back. No. There has to be a way out. The Reaper's jaw unhinged wider, mimicking a smile. There is. Give me your remembrance, and I'll let you return. Elias blinked. My what? The Reaper lifted its bony hand. Suddenly, a small orb appeared, glowing inside Elias's chest, pulsing like a second heart. It hurt. This is what anchors you. Memory. Identity. Regret. Pain. Love. Every memory is a nail pinning your soul to flesh. If you surrender it, the Reaper said, you will wake again. But hollow. Soulless. A shell. Elias looked at the mirror again. He saw himself smiling. Dead-eyed. Happy in emptiness. No pain, the reflection whispered. No fear. Just peace. But Elias gritted his teeth. If I give you that, I'm not me anymore. The Reaper tilted its head. Then run. And the world screamed. The ground fractured. Spires exploded into clouds of bone dust. Rivers of the damned boiled over. The souls wailed as the Reaper gave chase. Elias turned and ran through collapsing alleys and screaming cathedrals of decay. The Reaper followed, faster than thought, howling through the realm with laughter made of dying stars. He ran across bridges of teeth, through forests of dangling skeletons whose fingers reached for him. The sky split open, revealing eyes the size of planets watching him with burning hunger. One soul ghost lunged at him. It whispered, "Give him your name. And wake up." Elias turned sharply and darted into a tower made of mirrors. Every wall reflected a version of him, a child crying, a teenager bleeding in a car wreck, a grown man screaming at an empty grave. Each version begged him to stop. "You don't belong here," one shouted. But in the central mirror, he saw himself, now. Whole. Alive. Bleeding. Terrified. He lunged forward. The mirror rippled like water. Just as the Reaper crashed through the tower, howling in fury, Elias flung himself into the reflection. And everything went black. He awoke gasping. In the chapel. Alive. His hands trembled. The mirror was shattered. No sign of the Reaper. But the sigil on his chest was still there. Fainter, but pulsing. He wasn't free. Not yet. But he was alive. Or something close to it. Elias stared at his reflection in the shards of the broken mirror. His eyes looked the same, but something inside had changed. There was a humming in his skull, faint at first, like a distant insect trapped behind his thoughts. The air around him felt heavier, pressed in like invisible fingers. The world no longer felt real, and neither did he. He stood, and the chapel seemed darker, as though some of the light had died. The candles that once flickered now sputtered with blue flames, casting dancing shadows shaped like human figures with elongated limbs. His chest still throbbed. The sigil, the mark, was glowing faintly beneath his shirt, pulsing like a second heartbeat. No matter how many times he scratched or clawed at it, the skin wouldn't tear. It had fused to him. Part of him. A tether to the Reaper's realm. Outside the chapel, the sky had turned bruised purple. The air smelled of rotting leaves and burned copper. Even the birds had gone silent. A creeping fog spilled down the street like it had purpose. Elias needed answers. And there was only one person left who might know. He found Mara Langley, the local medium, just outside town, in a crooked house made of driftwood and charm beads. She opened the door before he knocked. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, eyes wide. "You've been marked. I can smell it on your soul." Elias stepped forward. "I need to know how to get it off. I saw the Reaper, I was in his world." Mara's face turned pale. "You've already crossed the veil." She backed away, muttering under her breath in a language he didn't understand. "I didn't give him anything," Elias said. "But he offered me peace, if I gave him my memories." "What does that mean?" Mara stared at him for a long moment before speaking. "It means the hollowing has begun." She took him into her basement, a room lined with talismans, bones, mirrors, and jars filled with floating, twitching things. She lit a circle of black candles and motioned for him to sit. "The Soul Reaper doesn't harvest lives like you'd think. He doesn't take the body, not right away. He takes the you inside. Bit by bit. Piece by piece. He consumes what makes you human, your regrets, your fears, your love, until nothing remains but a breathing husk." Elias whispered, "What happens then?" She looked him in the eyes. "You become one of his." Mara pulled a rusted blade from a velvet case. "We must cut the tether before it grows stronger." Elias swallowed hard. "Won't that kill me?" "Maybe," she said honestly. "But if we wait, you'll lose more than your life." She plunged the blade into the sigil. Elias screamed. He writhed in the candlelit circle as black smoke poured from the wound. The mark burned, and Mara chanted furiously, her voice trembling. The basement shook. Bottles shattered. Then came the voice, not from outside, but inside Elias's head. "You dare resist me?" Mara screamed and flew backward, her body slamming into the shelves. Elias clutched his chest, teeth grit, blood pouring between his fingers. And in the center of the circle, something emerged. It wasn't the Reaper. Not entirely. It was a fragment, a silhouette made of tar, shadow, and twisted bone. A mouth with too many teeth. Arms that split into claws. Eyes that didn't blink but stared into every part of him. I gave you a choice, it growled. You said no. So I will take you slowly. Elias gasped, I won't let you. The Reaper's fragment smiled. You already have. It vanished. When Elias awoke, Mara was gone. Or rather, what remained of her was scattered across the walls, ceiling, and floor. Scratched symbols in blood told him only one thing. Too late. He stumbled outside. The world had changed again. People moved through town like lifeless dolls. Their eyes were glassy, unfocused. Their lips moved but made no sound. As he passed them, some flinched, as if feeling his presence like a sickness. Elias heard a voice in one woman's head as he brushed past her. He walks the line now. Between death and nothing. He realized the hollowing wasn't just inside him. It was spreading. The Reaper had infected this world through him. He rushed to his apartment, heart pounding. As he opened the door, the air shifted. His reflection in the hallway mirror turned to face him, and smiled. The real Elias did not. His reflection opened its mouth. Black smoke poured out. And Elias dropped to his knees, clutching his head. He could feel memories slipping, his father's voice, the smell of his childhood home, the warmth of his dog's fur. Fading. Erased. The hollowing had begun. And if he couldn't stop it, there would be nothing left to save. Elias sat on the floor of his apartment, shivering in the dark, staring at his reflection as it moved independently in the cracked mirror. The thing in the glass, his reflection, smiled wider now, teeth sharper, eyes black as ink. It was no longer a passive echo of him. It had become something else. His thoughts felt thin, like torn paper. Words he once knew slipped from his mind like smoke. People's names. Places. Memories. His mother's face. All growing dimmer, swallowed by the tether. The sigil still pulsed beneath his shirt, but it no longer burned, it ached, like something buried deep beneath his ribs was twisting, pulling, hungering. There was only one thing left to try. The severing. Elias found the name in Mara's journal, buried beneath blood-streaked pages. A ritual said to break the bond between soul and Reaper, if performed before the hollowing consumed too much. Few had ever attempted it. Fewer had survived. He gathered the tools from her shattered home. Black salt, obsidian daggers, and bone dust ink. Then he made his way to the old mine on the edge of the forest, the place marked in Mara's final note. It was said the mine sat on a fault between worlds. A place thin enough to bleed. The air inside the shaft was cold and wet, stinking of rust and decay. Every sound echoed longer than it should. Shadows moved when he wasn't looking at them. He stepped through the darkness, deeper, until even his flashlight gave up. Only the glow of the sigil remained now, leading him forward like a cursed lantern. In the heart of the mine, he found the chamber. Circular. Hollowed out. Lined with bones and ash. He set the candles, drew the runes, sat in the center, and cut his palm. The chant spilled from his lips like venom, Mara's words, half-remembered and burning in his throat. The room grew colder. The mirror he placed before him cracked without touch. Then the shadows gathered. It was not the Reaper's true form that appeared. No, it never fully entered the world of the living, but a larger piece of it came this time. Its body was a tangle of cloaks made from stolen faces. Its arms were skeletal wings. Its chest, split down the center, revealed a pit of writhing souls screaming silently. You seek to sever what is bound, the Reaper's voice hissed from the walls, the floor, from inside Elias's mind. You belong to me. Elias shook his head, teeth chattering. I want my soul back. The Reaper laughed, and it hurt, a sound that cracked the walls, made blood run from Elias's ears. "Then take it, mortal." From the pit in its chest, a shape rose. It was him. Or what used to be. A hollow version of Elias, mouth sewn shut, hands trembling, eyes blank. His soul. The severing began. The ritual called for a confrontation. A final battle not with the Reaper itself, but with the part of himself that had already been taken. Elias stepped forward. So did the hollow Elias. They circled. His double lunged, feral, animalistic. Elias dodged and drove the obsidian dagger deep into its shoulder. The creature screeched, a sound like glass breaking inside his skull, and clawed at him with fingers that left burns, not cuts. Each wound Elias took drained more of him. Flashes of his childhood. His first kiss. His brother's laughter. Gone. Like turning pages ripped from a book. He couldn't last much longer. The hollow Elias laughed silently, mouth still stitched shut, and lunged again. Elias screamed, ripped the dagger from the creature's chest, and drove it into the sigil on his own body. The pain was unreal. But it worked. The sigil pulsed violently, cracked, and then burst, blinding light filling the mine. Elias awoke on the floor of the chamber, bloodied, burned, barely breathing. The mirror had shattered. The candles were out. The hollow version of himself was gone. And the sigil on his chest was black, lifeless, like burned skin. He thought it was over. Until he noticed the walls. They were moving. Not crumbling, breathing. The bones fused together, the darkness around him thickened. 1,000 whispers filled the air. One tether severed, the voice of the Reaper hissed. "But I am no longer outside you." Elias turned and vomited blood. Something was wrong. He'd severed the mark, but the Reaper had sunk deeper. Not a wound now. A womb. He was becoming a vessel. A doorway. The ritual had not banished the Reaper. It had invited it in. And as he stumbled out of the mine, the sky above writhed. Stars blinked out one by one. The moon turned black. He was too late. The hollowing had only been the beginning. What came next would be the reaping. Elias staggered out of the mine like a man born into the wrong world. His limbs felt foreign, like borrowed tools. The night air should have been cold, but it wasn't, it was dead. Still. Pressed flat like a held breath. Above him, the moon was gone. Not hidden, devoured. Stars bled in the sky, each one flickering out like an eyelid closing forever. The town of Edivane lay sprawled before him, sleeping in oblivion. Lights still flickered in windows. Street lamps hummed. But something underneath the surface had changed. It was like watching insects crawl over a corpse they hadn't realized was dead yet. Elias looked down at his chest. The sigil, once a pulsing, glowing wound, was now a jagged black scar. But inside, he felt movement. Something curled in his gut. Something ancient. Something awake. The severing had failed. Not because the ritual was wrong. But because he waited too long. The Reaper was inside now. Not a visitor. Not a hunter. A seed. And now the harvest had come. Elias didn't remember walking back to town. 1 second, he stood at the mine's mouth. The next, he was in the middle of Edivane's town square, his feet slick with blood. No people. Only remnants. Clothes scattered in the street, dropped mid-step. Cars crashed, doors flung open. Cell phones still playing voicemails from voices that no longer existed. The Reaper hadn't taken their bodies. It had taken their souls. He passed the church. Its steeple bent inward like a snapped neck. The stained glass wept black tears. The bell rang without wind, each chime stealing another breath from his lungs. Then he heard it. The weeping. It came from everywhere, low, mournful cries, endless and overlapping. Not screams. Not rage. Just mourning. A city's worth of souls torn from their anchors, drifting like ash. He fell to his knees. This was his fault. He brought it here. He carried the door in his own chest. He was the reaping. Behind him, something moved. Not footsteps. Not voices. Just presence. He turned. They stood at the edges of the square, dozens of them. Hundreds. Hollow people. Faces missing. Mouths stitched. Eyes full of black fog. The same creatures he saw in Mara's journal. The reaped. Their heads tilted in unison, puppets bound by an invisible string. And then one stepped forward. Not a hollow. Mara. But not her. Not anymore. Her skin was pale, lips cracked. Eyes gone, replaced by endless void. Elias, she whispered, and her voice was like paper scraping bone. You opened the way. He backed away. You were trying to stop this. She smiled. I was. Until I realized the truth. The Reaper doesn't destroy. It frees. No more pain. No more time. Just silence. Just peace. She reached toward him. Let go, Elias. You don't have to fight anymore. He felt it then, the pull. Sweet. Soft. A gravity inside his bones dragging him forward. His body ached to surrender. His mind begged for rest. But somewhere deep, beyond the sickness, beyond the fear, something stirred. A memory. His brother's laugh. A single moment of sunlight. His mother's humming. He clenched his fists. No, he growled. Not peace. Oblivion. He ran. They chased him through alleys that bent in impossible angles, buildings taller than they had any right to be. The town twisted under Reaper influence, becoming a maze of sorrow. He found the old school. The place where he first saw the reflection move on its own. It stood untouched, a silent relic. Inside, the hallways smelled like dust and mold. Lockers groaned. Lights flickered dimly, then died. And in the auditorium, he found it. The mirror. The original gate. Still whole. Still humming with power. If he could destroy it, truly destroy it, maybe the tether would snap. Maybe the Reaper would be severed permanently. He grabbed a broken chair leg and raised it high. Then it arrived. Not a vision. Not a shadow. The Soul Reaper itself. It unfolded from the mirror like smoke, taking a form too vast to fit in the room. Its skull face was carved from bone older than language. Cloaks of screaming faces billowed around it. From its chest, souls reached out. Elias saw Mara. His mother. His own reflection. Break the mirror, it hissed. And you break them. Elias hesitated. The souls weren't just trapped, they were entwined. Break the anchor, and they might all shatter with it. Tears streamed down his face. There was no clean choice. Only endings. He whispered, I'm sorry. And swung. The mirror shattered. The sound was like the world being torn in half. Light erupted. Screams deafened. The Reaper wailed, its form splintering, bleeding black light. The souls screamed louder, then vanished. The mirror became dust. And the Reaper. Gone. Elias woke in the ruins of the auditorium. The sky above was clear. The town was silent. No people. No Reaper. No souls. He walked through a divane. Alone. The air tasted hollow. Every step echoed too long. He had done it. But at what cost? No one remained. No voices. No birds. No machines. Just him. He had severed the Reaper's tether. But in doing so, he had become the final soul left behind. The last echo of a world that no longer existed. As the sun rose, pale and silent, Elias sat on the school steps and whispered to no one. I stopped the reaping. His voice cracked. But there's nothing left to save. The end.